Good morning, Messiah. This is Pastor Harris, and I serve the members, friends, neighbors of Messiah Lutheran Church in Auburn as senior pastor. It's so good to have you here as part of our Friday morning devotion. My devotion today is from Psalm 8. I was intrigued by Psalm 8 because it really talks about who we are in relationship to God. In fact, in relationship to the universe in very poetic and expansive ways. And so I looked at a couple different versions of the song, and I landed on the Message version as a way that I think really opens up what the psalmist is trying to say, especially during this time of pandemic when, we may think we're fairly insignificant and at forces beyond our control. Let's hear what the psalmist says today. So Psalm 8. God, brilliant Lord, yours is a household name. Nursing infants gurgle choruses about you. Toddlers shout the songs that drown out enemy talk and silence atheist babble. I look up at your macro skies, dark and enormous, your handmade sky jewelry, moon and stars mounted in their settings. Then I look at my micro self and wonder, why do you bother with us? Why do you take a second look our way? Yet, we've so narrowly missed being gods, bright with Eden's dawn light. You put us in charge of your handcrafted world, repeated to us your Genesis charge, made us lords of sheep and cattle, even animals out in the wild, birds flying and fish swimming, whales singing in the ocean's deep. God, brilliant Lord, your name echoes around the world. It's just an amazing picture, especially in the midst of this time of coronavirus, this time of pandemic, when we are buffeted all around by fears of catching the virus and suffering, whether it's minor symptoms all the way as some of our neighbors or friends or our family have experienced death. It's really a disease that does not stay within normal boundaries, and I get the sense we're always having to be on guard, and it's tiring, it's exhausting. And it's like, who are we really in the midst of all of that? And in the midst of the economic and racial and social sort of upset and questioning that's going on, who are we really as people, as a human community that can be so easily knocked off balance? It's like riding a horse down a well-worn path, and then all of a sudden one day there's a low-hanging tree branch that knocks you off your horse, and you end up laying on the path looking up at the sky, and you go, how did I get here all of a sudden? I've gone down this path hundreds of times, and and then your horse comes back and stares down at you and looks at you going, really? Do you think you're that important? And then the psalmist says, yes, we, as God's creation, humanity as a whole, are very important. There's this sense of God being close with us in the house, with infants and toddlers singing their songs around God's presence, and God sort of motions up to the sky and says, look what I've made. It's amazing, isn't it? I love how the psalmist says, your handmade sky jewelry, moon and stars mounted in their settings. And then there's this contrast, that question that comes up, who am I, my micro self, my little insignificant self? I'm the one laying on this well-worn path looking up at my horse that I just got knocked off of. Really, am I that important in the grand scheme of the universe? And the psalmist says, yes, you are. Remember that in God's Eden world, you were almost like God yourself, that you had been given and put in charge of the entirety of the rest of creation to steward it and nurture it, made us lords of sheep and cattle, even animals out in the wild, birds flying, fish swimming, whales singing in the ocean depths. We have a call and a charge by God to be the creative, nurturing, leading group of entities that are to care for and watch out for the rest of the world. In fact, maybe even this macro universe the psalmist talks about. It's a high charge and a high calling. And God entrusts us with that. And God is faithful to God's promise that we who are God's people, have a place in which we're entrusted with both responsibility, but also gifted to carry out our tasks. And God is faithful to us in the midst of our daily life. So if you feel like you've been knocked off your horse by some unforeseen branch in the path, and you're laying on your back looking up at the sky with that horse looking down at you, if you ever feel that, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, if you're feeling kind of low, like you've been, kind of stretched too thin, remember this, that we occupy as humanity a very special place in God's creation, in this amazing universe. Not one where we lord it over others, but one where we have a very specific and special call by God to be the creative, nurturing, leading group of beings to help God's creation get to where God wants it to be. God bless you in that work today. So right now, maybe for all of us, it's time to pick ourselves up off that dusty path or trail, stare our horse right in the eye, and say, you know what? I'm climbing back on. Let's keep riding. God bless you all. Have a great weekend. Bye now.